I was almost finished with my work when my phone buzzed on the counter. Mom's name appeared on the screen. I stopped and stared at it for a moment. My heart skipped a beat. I wasn't sure if I wanted to answer, but I did. "Hi, Anara," I said quietly. Mom's voice sounded strange. She sounded too happy, almost like she was laughing even though I knew something big was going on. I put my coffee down and listened. "Hi, I just have exciting news," she said. "Yarek and I are flying to Greece tomorrow." I frowned. "Greece? Really? Why would she go to Greece tomorrow?" "Oh, and I almost forgot," she continued quickly. "We sold the lake house and your car. We needed money fast, and honestly you weren't using them. Everything's done now. The money's already sent to the bank. We leave tomorrow afternoon. Isn't that amazing?" Her voice was light, like it was nothing important. But it was very important. She had taken away so many memories in just one sentence. "Love you, sweetheart. We'll send photos," she added. Then she hung up. I stared at my laptop screen. My reflection blinked back at me. I was 29 years old, sitting in a crowded cafe in Austin. Outside, cars honked and people walked past as if nothing had changed. But everything had changed for me. Mom said we, but she really meant her and Yarek, not me. The lake house wasn't just a house. It was a place full of memories. It was where Dad taught me to swim, where the summers smelled like wood and grilled corn, where I ran barefoot on the deck and chased fireflies at night. My car, a 1971 Mustang, Dad and I had worked on together the summer before he died. It wasn't new or fancy, but it was ours. And now it is gone. Mom had sold it like it was just an old chair or something nobody wanted anymore. I closed my laptop slowly. I didn't panic. I had known this might happen one day. I drained the last sip of my cold coffee, reached into my bag, and pulled out my second phone. This phone was special. I only used it for one person. I dialed the number. A calm voice answered on the other end. "She did it," I said quietly. "She sold the house and the car." There was a pause. "Do we go ahead?" the voice asked. "Yes," I whispered. "We'll start the transfers." I put the phone back into my bag. The feeling in my chest wasn't heavy or sad. It felt more like armor around me, protecting me. Around me life went on. Coffee machines hissed and steamed. Someone laughed loudly by the window. No one noticed the woman in the corner, who was planning a very different kind of vacation. No one noticed that someone had just tried to erase my life. But she had forgotten something. She forgot what Dad had taught me. How to prepare quietly, wait patiently, and protect what was mine before anyone knew. The envelope had been hidden in the back of my dresser for 16 months. I had moved it twice, once when I moved to Austin and once after New Year's, but I had never opened it. I didn't even peek. On the front, Dad had written clearly, "Anara, open this only when you're ready." I remembered the day he gave it to me. We were sitting on the deck of the lake house. I was 28, home from Dallas for the weekend. Dad poured black coffee into a chipped mug and slid the envelope toward me. "Don't open it," he said, "unless something happens. Only open it when you feel it's time." I thought he meant something dramatic like being arrested or getting very sick. He didn't mean dying in the garage on a Wednesday morning while fixing brake pads on my car. That envelope became a quiet shadow in my life. I kept paying the property taxes on the lake house because I thought it honored Dad. I let Mom drive the Mustang because I thought it was the right thing to do. But now she had sold both like they were nothing. I put the envelope on my kitchen counter. My hands were steady, but my chest burned with a feeling I didn't have a name for. I slid a thumb under the seal. Inside were 5 documents. No letter, no note. The first document was a notarized deed transferring the lake house into an LLC 2 years before Dad died. The second was the Mustang. The next 2 were rental houses in Dallas that I hadn't even known about. The last document was the original certificate of organization for Morgan Holdings, LLC. My name was on it, my address, Dad's signature, and the attorney's stamp. Everything was legal. Everything was airtight. Dad had seen this coming. He hadn't trusted Mom to handle it. I folded the papers neatly, took my second phone, and dialed Kieran. He answered on the first ring. "She never had the right to sell any of it," I said. "Which means," he said calmly, "we're not just protecting it. We're taking control." I finished. "Let's start with the buyer." Fenwick, Kieran's colleague, slid the sale papers across his steel desk. He looked at each page carefully. "Buyer listed as Celine Ashford," he said. I smiled a little. Not a coincidence. This was part of my plan. Celine was my freshman year roommate. She was now in real estate. I hadn't told her everything, just that she needed to act as the buyer if Mom ever tried to sell anything without permission. She had agreed. Quietly, she would keep the property safe until I could fix everything. Fenwick whistled softly. So your mother tried to sell property she didn't own, and the buyer is someone you legally trusted to protect it? Very smart. You could even take her to court. I know, I said. But you don't want to humiliate her, he asked. No, I said. I want her to understand. To feel the consequence of her actions. Not punishment, just the lesson she gave herself. The court won't teach her that. It would just give her someone else to blame. We were quiet for a moment. Then Fenwick asked, So, what's the plan? We freeze everything, I said. We undo the transfers. Move all the titles back to Morgan Holdings. Lock the LLC. Notify the county. When Mom comes back from Europe, she will find nothing that belongs to her. Fenwick nodded slowly. And Celine? She keeps the deeds a little longer. When Mom tries to go into the house, Celine will be the one to say no. My name won't be on it yet. By noon, the plan was already in motion. By nightfall, every property was safe. On my phone, I saw a post. Mom wearing oversized sunglasses and Yarek holding a passport smiling. The caption said, Time for our next chapter, Europe, here we come. I didn't comment, didn't like it, didn't react. She thought I was hurt in Austin. While Mom and Yarek sipped champagne somewhere over the Atlantic, I moved fast. Fenwick filed the reversal paperwork with the county. Celine returned the deeds exactly as we planned. I logged into the Morgan Holdings dashboard and locked every property under my control. Real estate, vehicles, rental income, all safe. The Mustang was easiest. The title had never been fully transferred. A few clicks and it was back in my name. Yarek had left it in long-term parking at the Austin airport. I arranged for it to be picked up, cleaned, and delivered to my garage. The lake house took more care. Fenwick drafted an eviction notice under the LLC. Legally, my name did not appear. Celine was listed as the authorized agent when the letter arrived 30 days after Mom had planned her return. Just enough time for her to unpack, take a deep breath, and then read the notice taped to the front door. I wasn't angry. That surprised me. I thought I would be. But the feeling I had was cleaner than rage. It was detachment. The kind you feel when you stop asking someone to be who they can't be. Dad used to say, Some people don't leave, they wait to be forced out. Mom had always been that person. I used to imagine she'd see sense, realize family isn't something you spend. But that was before I saw her name on forged documents, before her voice chirped in my ear that everything I loved was gone. They say revenge is best served cold. But this wasn't revenge. This was the consequence. Mom had taught herself the lesson. The day they landed in Lisbon, I made one last call to check on deliveries. Then I took the Mustang for a long drive past the lake house she thought she owned. I drove into the Texas evening like nothing had ever been taken from me. She came back 4 weeks early. No warning, no phone call. Just a knock on my apartment door on a Thursday afternoon. I opened it and barely recognized her. Her hair was pulled back in a messy rubber band. Her designer bag was squished and overstuffed. Shadows were carved under her eyes. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then she said my name. Her voice was thin, almost breaking. Can I come in? She asked, her voice soft and trembling. I let her step inside. I didn't say anything at first. I watched her, noticing every detail, how her hands shook, how her eyes darted around. She had tried to take everything from me, and now she was empty. I thought, she started, but her voice trailed off. You thought what? I asked quietly. That the lake house was mine. The car, everything. It wasn't, I said gently. You never had the right to sell any of it. Dad made sure of that. She looked at me like she didn't understand. Like she had just realized that her life, the one she tried to steal from me, wasn't hers at all. I took a deep breath. I could feel the quiet power in the room. I wasn't yelling. I wasn't crying. I wasn't even angry. I just let her stand there and feel what it was like to have nothing that belonged to her. For the first time, she understood. She had tried to take my family, my memories, my things, my life, and she had failed. All of it was back where it belonged. I had protected what Dad had trusted me with. And now, she will remember this lesson for the rest of her life. It was quiet for a long time. I could hear the faint sound of cars outside. I could hear the ticking of the clock on the wall. Mom, or rather Valeria, finally sat down. She didn't look at me. She just stared at the floor. Anara, she whispered. I didn't think you didn't think I would protect it, I said softly. But I did. I always knew how. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. The silence said everything. I poured a cup of coffee for myself and one for her, though I knew she didn't deserve it. She didn't drink it. She just sat there, realizing for the first time that her life of trying to take what was not hers had come to an end. I looked out the window at the lake, at the Mustang parked safely in the garage, at the properties all locked under Morgan Holdings. Everything was safe. Everything was mine. And I had done it quietly, carefully, without a single person knowing until it was done. Mom, or Valeria, had taught herself a lesson. She had tried to erase me, but she forgot that Dad had taught me better. He had taught me how to protect what mattered, how to wait, and how to move quietly. And now she knew. She would never forget. I took a sip of my coffee and smiled slightly. Not a mean smile, but a calm one. A satisfied smile. I had won, not by being cruel, but by being smart. By being prepared. By being patient. By being me. The quiet power of knowing I had protected everything Dad cared about filled me. Outside, life went on. People walked past, cars honked, children laughed in the park nearby. But I had my peace. I had my memories. I had my Mustang. I had my lake house. I had my dad's trust. And no one, not even Mom, could take that away from me ever again. Valeria finally spoke again, her voice even softer. I understand. Yes, I said. Now you do. And in that moment, everything was finally right. I stepped aside quietly, letting Vivian walk into my apartment. She moved like she owned the place, even though she had never been there before. Her eyes looked around slowly, carefully, as if she was trying to find something familiar. She stopped at the kitchen island and just stood there, not quite a visitor, not quite a stranger. I didn't ask why she had come. I just went to fill the kettle. We sat in silence while the water heated, listening to the small sounds around the apartment. When the whistle from the kettle pierced the quiet, I poured hot water into 2 mugs. I handed one to her. She held it with both hands, looking into the steam as if it could tell her answers she didn't yet know. Yarrick left, she said after a long pause, her voice small and shaky. He went to Portugal, met someone on a boat tour, a 23-year-old backpacker from Marseilles. She laughed, but it sounded hollow, empty. He said he needed to find himself, took all our money, and left. I nodded once, not pitying her, just understanding. I tried to book a flight home using my points while she kept talking. The account had no money, so I had to borrow money from a stranger at the airport just to call the airline. When I landed, Vivian hesitated, looking nervous. Her eyes shone with something sharp and small, something that made me unsure of what she was thinking. There it was, the truth dressed up in desperation. I stayed quiet until the moment stretched, until the silence almost broke. Then, softly, I said, "Of course you can stay, just for a little while." She blinked, surprised. "Thank you, baby. I know I don't deserve it." I didn't argue. She moved into the guest room. I handed her clean towels, a key, and the Wi-Fi password. I didn't ask what she planned next. She didn't ask what I had done since she left. Every evening, she tried cooking meals that reminded me of my childhood. Each morning, she washed the dishes before I woke up. I let her think this meant something important, but I also kept quiet notes. I wrote down every time she used my card, every lie, every small contradiction. I wasn't building a case to punish her. I was building understanding for myself. Because forgiveness without knowing the truth isn't real. It's just pretending. And I had spent enough of my life being erased. That night, after she went to bed, I opened the leather notebook I had once used for client strategies and turned to a blank page. I wrote her name at the top. I wrote the date she had come back at the top. She had gotten the job herself. I didn't ask where she was going that morning. She had left in a borrowed cardigan and clutching a wrinkled resume. When she returned hours later, she placed a folded piece of paper on the counter. "It's night office cleaning, 2 buildings minimum wage," she said. "They said I start tomorrow if I wanted to." I replied, "Then you should." That was all. The first week, she came home with sore feet and tight shoulders. I left Epsom salts by the bathroom door. She didn't thank me. She woke before sunrise, leaving quietly as if she wanted no one to see her still in bed. It all felt a little too neat, like the right kind of suffering performed at just the right pitch. But sometimes she forgot to act. One afternoon, I found her in the laundry room, scrubbing the cuffs of her work pants by hand, even though the machine sat empty. No noise, no posing, just focus. Her mouth was a flat line, serious and steady. Another evening, she sat at the kitchen table with a notepad, carefully writing down hours worked and expenses, like she was building a life from dust. No one cheered. I didn't praise her. I didn't rescue her. That wasn't the point. Meals became simple. Lentils, rice, canned vegetables. She ate every bite. She no longer pushed the plate away like someone who had been given too much in the past. Sometimes she spoke about applying for a second job, taking classes to prepare for her GED, or about studying interior design, something she had wanted to do before life became complicated. I didn't ask what complicated meant. She didn't explain. We weren't mother and daughter then. We were two women in a room where neither had the upper hand. Something shifted when she stopped asking for it. She never mentioned the lake house. She never asked about the Mustang. Maybe she knew they were gone. Maybe she chose silence. Silence has its own gravity. It either pulls you closer, or it teaches you to hold your shape without apology. One night, passing her door, I heard her crying softly. Not loud enough to be heard. Not loud enough to be comforted. Just soft, quiet tears. The sound of someone deciding whether to rebuild a life with bare hands. The second envelope was small. I had almost forgotten it existed until I found it behind an old photo album in my desk drawer. No label, just my name written in Dad's careful handwriting. Inside was a USB drive and a single folded page. His words were simple. If she ever returns and if she tells the truth, give her the rest, but only if you're ready to see all of it yourself. I plugged it in. No videos. No letters. Just files, ledgers, scanned legal documents, spreadsheets, a quiet forest of truth. The trust was real. Created 4 years before Dad died. Tied to an account in Wyoming, hidden under a shell company. I was the only beneficiary. The house, the car, the rentals, they were crumbs compared to this. Then I saw a note buried deep. A denied withdrawal attempt from 2 years ago. Vivian's name. A forged signature. She had tried even before the funeral. I printed the essentials. The trust documents, the forged claim, and a summary listing every asset now legally mine. Then I wrote a letter, not to her, but to the truth. When I finished, I sealed it and set it beside her teacup. The drive to the lake house was silent. She didn't ask where we were going until the gravel crunched beneath the tires. Her breath caught when she saw it. The pale house, the old porch swing, the wind that smelled like salt and pine. Inside, she moved like a ghost. She paused by the chipped teapot she had once bought at a yard sale. She stared at Dad's photo on the bookshelf, his wide grin over a fish he had caught that summer. When she sank onto the couch, I placed the envelope in her lap and left. From the hallway, I heard the soft rip of paper. Then silence. Then her breath breaking, followed by sobs that came in waves. She didn't deny it. She didn't defend herself. She just looked at me like she was seeing me for the first time, not as my daughter, but as the ledger she could no longer rewrite. You have a choice, I said quietly. Leave with dignity or stay. Not as my mother, but as someone who takes care of others. This house will become a retreat for women who were erased. Vivian nodded once. The days passed slowly. She started settling into routines. She cooked simple meals and cleaned quietly, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. She woke early, worked hard, and came home tired but quiet. I noticed the little things, how she left the towels folded neatly, how she swept the floor after cooking, how she stacked the dishes just so. It wasn't showy, it wasn't meant to impress. It was her way of building a life she could be proud of. And little by little, I saw her strength grow. I kept my distance, letting her do her work. I watched her sometimes, quietly from the other room, noting how she laughed when she thought no one was listening, or how she stared out the window, lost in thought. She didn't ask for help. She didn't ask for praise. She was learning to be herself again, step by step. Each evening, when she returned from work, she moved slowly but with purpose. Each morning, she rose before the sun, quietly starting her day. She was learning to hold her own weight, quietly, without applause. One day, I asked her to sit with me in the living room. I didn't say much. I just poured tea and handed her the cup. She held it carefully, her fingers wrapped around it. We didn't need words. The quiet was enough. We were both learning something, the power of silence, the strength and patience, and the slow building of trust. The house was no longer just a house. It was a place where truth mattered, where forgiveness could exist with honesty, and where someone could start again. Vivian's story was hers to write now. She no longer needed to act. She no longer needed to pretend. The mistakes of the past were laid out, clear and undeniable, but so was the chance to begin again. I could see it in her eyes, the first spark of hope. She was not the same person who had arrived desperate and afraid. She was becoming someone who could stand on her own, someone who could face the world with her hands steady and her heart open. And I, too, was learning. I was learning that forgiveness wasn't about forgetting. It wasn't about pretending things didn't happen. It was about seeing the truth, understanding it, and letting life move forward. Together, in silence, we learned to rebuild what had been broken. Piece by piece, moment by moment, we began to understand the meaning of home. Not just a place, but a feeling of being seen, acknowledged, and given a chance to be real.